Hello and welcome to episode 36 of Inherited Will, a One Piece podcast, a weekly podcast discussing each week's manga chapter and a reread of past chapters. My name is Thomas.
And my name is Jordan.
This week we'll be jumping on into chapter 1033, then later we will discuss 413 through 421. Here we go. Starting off with our cover page here, featuring Tashigi and a whole bunch of itty-bitty baby penguins having a good time playing dress-up and pretend.
Yeah, big fan of the fact that the bad guy that she's dressing up as is a shark in this situation.
Right. Very cute. I also like that Smoker is there, but not participating, aside from spooking that bat penguin there.
Yeah. That might actually be a killer whale and not a shark. I don't know.
Could go either way, but regardless, either of those things would spook a penguin real hardcore.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But it looks adorable on Tashigi, so it's a win all around.
Indeed. And I guess the penguins win too, because Tashigi is already surrendering.
Yeah, good point.
That white flag a-waving.
One cardboard sword is too much.
That takes us on into the chapter proper. We are resuming more or less right where we left off last week, excluding that Orochi stuff right at the end. Picking up with Zoro versus King, where Enma is going crazy trying to suck out all of Zoro's haki. That's no good. Zoro needs that inside of him.
For the most part, yeah. I'm sure armament haki is some form of it being outside, but yeah. Yeah.
I suppose so. Needs to keep it in this arm at least a little bit, though. Otherwise, right. It gets all like shriveled.
Keep it out of the sword, for sure.
Yeah. He does manage to rein it in for the moment, though. King notices this whole fiasco, rushes in, but weird thing, he stops just short of Zoro and just kind of chills there for a second. Zoro takes that opportunity to get a stab into his tummy, and the man explodes. That's curious.
Yeah.
That's a strange thing that happened.
He's into it, though, so he's got plans within plans.
I suppose so. Now, I assume this has to do with his Lunarian DNA. Maybe his fire powers extend to his blood. It like combusts if it makes contact with the air, maybe?
Well, it doesn't look like the sword actually pierces anything. There's an impact and he's like bent over at the impact site, but you can still see the tip of the sword. That's the thing that confused me.
I suppose that's true. The sword itself looks a little shorter than I think it should.
Maybe.
So I got the impression that it was piercing.
That's fair. I think maybe not so much blood, but like maybe just his skin in general. That's why he keeps it all covered. But I mean, nothing happened when the piece of his like scalp armor was removed, so maybe it's not all of it, maybe it's some of it, maybe it is blood, but I did not go back to double check if there was any blood during the glancing blow that took that armor.
I don't think there was, but I could be mistaken.
And he's not like damaged from what I can see, so
if it's just impacts, he takes a hefty one in a page or two, and nothing happens as a result of that. It's all very curious, but I guess we'll cover that when we get there. For the moment, the man has exploded. It's bad news for Zoro. We pop back into the pleasure hall where Sanji has just kicked Queen through a few walls from the looks of things. And confirms the assumption we all had from chapters and chapters ago, that Queen's comment about the Lunarians from back then was indeed in reference to specifically King. Describes them as monsters capable of surviving in any natural environment. Known as gods, supposedly. Apparently real scary guys. Sanji correctly asks the question, how'd they die then, if they were that good at staying alive? But Queen does not have answers. He might know, but,
Doesn't feel like sharing.
Exactly. Too busy firing that laser. I get it. It's
Yeah.
got stuff going on.
Talking about books that were probably burned on Ohara, so...
Probably. And even if so, even if you ask a history book, it's not going to talk back to you. Silly queen.
There's probably some devil fruit out there that can make them talk.
Probably. Maybe a Mont Doors book ability from back then.
Yeah,
or even
sure.
Just
Why
Big
not?
Moms, just put a homie in there, call it a day. Have the book read to you.
Perfect.
Immediately after that, though, we check back in with the fight that was just happening. Zoro and King. Seems Zoro just barely managed to survive that explosion because he got his armament hockey up in time. Zoro, like us, are confused about what on earth just happened, but lands one of his strongest moves, the Lion Song attack, directly in Queen's smug Lunarian face. But the man just tanks this one. He doesn't explode, no visible damage. He just eats the move, and it's totally fine.
You know, able to survive that natural sword environment.
Right? I'm sure there's like a land of swords out there somewhere.
Gotta be. Yeah, I almost feel like there's no point in trying to figure it out because I don't know. None of the
It's
clues
just too
seem
mysterious. It's just too mysterious at this point.
Kinda, yeah. There's a lot of factors, a lot of layers that don't seem to be meshing super well. At least not for me. Maybe there's some linchpin, out there that will make it all fit together, but not for me. Not yet.
The only guess I currently have is that if the first tummy stab attack actually did pierce, then it's like I said, like the blood mixing with the air and exploding or something. But in this panel, maybe he's just blocking with hockey. I'm not sure why he wouldn't just... Well, I'd have just taken this attack head on without blocking, if that is what has happened. Probably would have actually hurt him, but I don't know. My only guess is that it's a hockey thing in this particular situation.
Sure, yeah. But I don't know. There's no wound. There's no line on his stomach or anything. I don't...
Mm-mm. You can't see like a hole in the in his jacket in this next
Right.
little panel where he's transformed.
And he's definitely stretched out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But also yeah, I don't know. I just don't know. Why did he say jackpot when it was a stab? Has that been the only stab move that Zoro has used? Has everything else been a slice?
I think the only attacks that Zoro has landed on him up until this chapter have been the flying slashes.
Mm.
Like the one that nicked him on the face that broke his mask was a flying slash. All the moves that he was blocking and or dodging last chapter were the flying slashes, and the dragon twister. It's just kind of a tornado full of those things.
Right. So, okay, maybe it's a difference between stabbing and slashing, piercing, whatever. I don't know. I have no idea how an entire race could have something like that. But
Indeed. We just got to find that history book that Queen was talking about.
as soon as they release it, I'm there.
Right? You and me both. But back to the present. After tanking that slash from Zoro, Kane immediately transforms back into his pterodon form and launches his Imperial Deep Pride State attack, his weird launchin' something move from last week. Still a strange one, but that's what dinosaurs do after all. Unfortunately for Zoro, Enma's acting up again, sucking out his sweet, sweet hockey juice, causing problems, and as a result, Zoro takes a bit of that hit. Oh dear.
Not a comfortable time.
Fortunately, doesn't appear to be an especially deep wound, just kind of grazes his ribs from the looks of things. But it does mess up that cliff real bad. It causes Zoro to drop his swords and for him to fall. Oh no.
It's not often that this man drops his swords.
Indeed. He's usually pretty good at keeping hold of those things. I assume he puts glue on them after the mess with Butchie and Sham in like chapter 10 or whatever chapter they fight the Meow brothers.
Yeah, it gets expensive after a little bit, but it's worth it.
Zoro's falling. Kitetsu the third also falling. Zoro manages to catch it though. As a brief flashback, two flashbacks kinda. One to where he was talking to the Tengu man, who told Zoro a few weeks ago, or whenever this interaction happened, I don't know, that he's the one who made it. Then we flash back to way before that, right when they got to Lode Town, where Zoro basically purchased Kitetsu the Third from this swordsmith, or sword salesman man. That's when he first learned about cursed blades. Did the cool thing where he tested his luck against the sword's curse. It was a whole thing.
Yeah, well, as we learn in just a bit, that's when he learned it in fiction, but like in reality, he first learned about cursed swords long ago.
Yeah, but he was a wee baby back then. That doesn't count.
Yeah, no, you can't learn anything when you're a baby.
Yeah, exactly. Fortunately for Zoro, King, nice guy that he is, decides to not just let him fall and die. Kicks him back to relative safety with a fire kick. Wapa. Crunch, even.
Yeah, very fiery.
Taking a page from Sanji's book, it seems.
Or maybe it's the other way around.
I mean, the Lunarian DNA thing still could be real for Sanji. Distressing if true, but, you know, maybe this is literally a power that they have. Or
Could
that Sanji has because of this.
Wouldn't like that as much, but it certainly hasn't been ruled out yet.
Indeed.
But also, like, if the dude's blood... Like, I don't know if we need to go back to this, but if the dude's blood is combustible, then how is he controlling this? Like, are there tiny needles in his suit that just poke him when he needs a power-up? That sucks.
Well, yes, that certainly would suck. But I had assumed that it was just kind of separate things. Like his blood is combustible, but also he can control fire. And he's got the, like, constantly burning flame in his back. Maybe he's like, maybe it is like you said, and he's just got like a permanent wound back there that is just constantly on fire.
It could be.
And he can control it, and that's what he's trying to, like, draw into his leg.
That could be. I don't know. Anything could be.
What a mystery this man is. Big Who, King. Big Who. But fortunately for Zoro, he finds another sword that he apparently had dropped in that last confrontation. The most important one he's got, the Wado Ichimonji. Get another flashback to his little boy days, shortly after Kuina had died. He begged his master to let him have that sword, and vows then and there that for her sake and for his own, he's going to become the strongest swordsman in the world. His name will even be known in heaven, he says. Man's got big goals. Even as a wee lad.
Yeah, but he stuck to him. It's, pretty cool or whatever.
It's pretty much my opinion about the matter, too. I'd guess Zoro's cool. I suppose so.
Yeah, I mean, cool as a child, cool as an adult. That's my kind of guy, I guess.
That's right. Then we get another little flashback to him talking to the Tengu man again, who told him during those little trading days that Wado Ichimonji and Enma were crafted by the same person, the blacksmith Shimotsuki Kozaburo. Apparently, Zoro didn't consider it at the time because he was a busy man, but, it is a little weird that a famous sword by a Wano craftsman would be in the East Blue. What on earth is that about? Zoro asks himself. He answers these questions for himself after a few more pages. Takes some... I don't know what's quite happening here. Imperial slings and arrows. Is that like a fire projectile, I guess, being launched by King?
I don't see anything that makes me think fire.
Maybe he can also just do the flying slashes, and that's what's happening here. He's just doing it with his wings or something.
Yeah, you can definitely see that he's like moving his wings around. I don't know. He's being a real mean guy.
Indeed. A very unkind bird man. Zoro manages to block best he can, but Enma's being naughty again. Kane uses his opportunity to close the gap and crash into Zoro with a big wing Kadoom attack, which forces him through the... I thought they were, like, on the island, like itself, like on the land bit of it, but he crashes through, like, a ceiling or something.
Yeah, definitely a wall there.
Indeed. I guess they're just in the basement now.
Also, his arm looks super nasty.
Yeah, it sure does. It's very wrinkled and twisty and very curved.
And skinny.
Yeah, he's having a rough go, this Zoro. This man was struggling with Kane, like, from the get-go of this fight, and now his sword is revolting against him, and just deteriorating more and more with each passing moment.
Yeah, not really sure what it means for the sword to be revolting. Like, I don't understand the extent that this thing is, quote-unquote misbehaving.
Yeah, I guess so. We get some clarification on it during the flashback bit. As we'll touch on it when we get to that point. Pop back to Momonosuke and Zoro from a few weeks prior, when Momo was asking him about the Tsunachi term that he had heard, that I think it was Kiku that yelled at him for saying it. And at that time, we had found out that Zoro had heard that phrase from an old man in his village, that we're about to find out about right now. The old man, as Zoro describes, was always sitting at the coast, but he never knew his name. Always sitting there. We even know that Zoro spoke to the man a few times, but never asked for his name. What an odd man he was back in those days.
Yeah, real cool kid.
Indeed. Apparently, this dude was Kuina's grandfather. Which means that since we know that old man was Shimotsuki Kozaburo, that means that Kuina and presumably her father, we don't get, like, hard confirmation that he is the one who's, like, on the Wano side of the family, basically, but I would assume that to be the case. But Kuina at least, right? Kuina at least descended from a samurai of Wano, specifically the Shimotsuki clan, which is notably the same clan that we assume Zoro to be descended from.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
Indeed. So they are, it still hasn't been hard confirmed that guy is Zoro's father, but all evidence seems to point to that conclusion. So Kuina and Zoro are related, apparently.
In some fashion. Not sure quite how yet, but I'm sure we will learn soon enough.
Distant cousins or something, I'm sure. It's not weird, I promise. Tengu Guy goes on to describe that Shimotsuki Kozaburo broke the laws and left the land of Wano over 50 years ago. Not clarified why. We actually kind of knew this already. We knew that somebody, like a ship, left Wano decades ago. And I think in that same SBS that we find out about that, he kind of hints that somebody had set up shop in Zoro's village, and that's why it's called the Shimotsuki village.
Yeah, but I remember that somewhat.
So this is just more details on what specifically happened at that time. Then we pop back in a proper flashback to 13 years ago, to Shimotsuki village itself, where Zoro is hanging out with the old man. This is where he learns about the Tsunachi term. Zoro immediately disregards that and asks questions of his own. Did you used to be a samurai?
You gotta ask a question when you got it in your heart.
Pretty much. The man doesn't really confirm or deny this information, but does say that if you keep asking me about this, the Navy will show up and probably kill us all. That's no good. To which Zoro says, I guess. You
Yeah.
terrible, terrible old man.
I'm gonna go do kid stuff now.
Pretty much. The old man watches Zoro train for a little bit, and just kind of gives Zoro 2 real swords. And these are the same 2 swords that he uses up until they are broken by Mihawk and their little conflict on the Baratie.
Yeah, well, they're crap, so.
Indeed. Described as such by the very man who made them. It does make you wonder just really to what extent these swords are that bad. Because they serve Zoro well for like 10 years after this, right? Mm-hmm. It's just when they come up against Mihawk, the big man himself, that they shatter. So I wonder if they're really just crap by the old man's own standards, you know?
Well, for sure. I was wondering why this dude was just chilling there with 3 swords all the time.
Yeah, I guess so. You don't really see him in any of the, aside from like the one that's at his waist, of course, in any of the previous panels where he's chilling. Maybe they're just like inside his kimono or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it also could just be that like Zoro comes here to train a lot, and he was just like, oh, I'm gonna do this at some point. I'll just bring the swords.
Yeah, that could be. No reason to think this all happened on the same day.
Yeah.
This man gives a little bit of wisdom about the nature of swords itself. They are crafted to murder people. So when a blacksmith is honing his craft, it is to make his weapons better at killing than any other, which kind of spooks Zoro for a hot second. He then goes on to describe swords have their own personality, and if you want your sword to obey you, you have to bend it to your will. Cursed swords are just a sign of great quality swords. Basically saying that the cursed swords are just especially high quality swords that people have decided are cursed because they are spooked by them. Did you know? It's pretty neat. And he says, that's great. Pretty much. Swords are meant for killing people, and they should be frightening.
Mm-hmm. We do get a shot where Zoro's holding one of the swords that he just got, and it is easily 1.5 times his size.
Yeah, it's like a man-sized sword.
Yep.
He's a tiny baby.
Just, I love this little shot of him. He looks so, I don't know, determined, focused, something.
Since this flashback is about to end, I would like to briefly call attention to like how Zoro is kind of drawn in these little flashback bits.
Yeah.
Back in those days, like when this flashback happened the first time round with Zoro and Kuina and his master, Oda used to like to draw like the kids in the flashbacks with really big, like oval shaped mouths.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really do that so much anymore, but in this flashback he does it again a couple times.
It is
interesting.
interesting.
Back to his art style back in those days.
Yeah. I mean, definitely updated, but an homage. Yeah, it's nice to see.
Nice to see the man paying homage to himself from back in the day.
Yeah, why not? When you've been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's see here. The man, Shimotsuki Kozaburo, goes on to describe the greatest sword he ever crafted when he was a young man. Its disposition, deadly serious, as he describes. Holding it sends a shiver down your spine. Zoro is experiencing something a little bit worse than a shiver right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, just a shiver, dang. How powerful was this guy?
Yeah, right? Maybe he was just that much of a badass back in the day that to him it was a mere shiver.
That's terrifying to think about.
This man was like a Yonko tier guy himself 50 years ago, without a doubt. He describes that he gave that masterpiece the name of the king who watches over hell. Zoro, in the present, finally pieces that together. Hold on a second. That's Enma. This is that sword. That guy made that sword. Therefore, that man, Shimotsuki Kozaburo. Golly gee.
Doing some real hardcore math on the fly here, Zoro.
He crunched those numbers in real time. Well done.
Doesn't feel like the appropriate time, but it had to happen eventually.
I guess so. I mean, it kind of checks out that these things will be flashing through his head at this point. He's trying to figure out the mystery of Enma. So in the heat of battle, I can see how like a previously forgotten memory regarding it would come back to him. But you know, it's got stuff to do, dude.
Yeah, you can't take it easy. Like, as much as you are right about that, he is laying here on the ground. I guess he's catching his breath as well. So, like,
I suppose so.
I can give the man a break.
He's had a few seconds. Kane is literally just playing with him right now, so he's gonna give him a hot second.
Yeah, and he's got to build up the hockey again, I guess. His arm's still looking pretty rough.
Yeah, sure does. Poor guy. Let's see. Anything else of note happen before we cruise on through? Yeah, a little bit. In the center panel, where he realizes, oh man, that man was the blacksmith Shimasuke Kozaburo. He remembers him saying, the swords kind of choose their masters. Only chooses the swordsman who best suits it. Which is also what that salesman from Lodetown said back in the day. To which Zoro responds, the sword is testing me, basically. It has to make sure that I can stand up to its standards, pretty much. Then he comments to himself that, oh, wow, that Odin guy was wielding you as though you were light as a feather. Very impressive. Odin was a beefy man.
Yeah, as much as Zoro has, like, improved and continues to, he's got a long way to go.
Quite so. Yeah. It really does make you wonder just how strong, like, Odin really was, right?
In his prime?
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, because, like, he injured Kaido, for sure, but presumably that was a weaker Kaido from 2 decades ago, right? And he was also getting, like, blasted away by Roger and Whitebeard and their little clashes. But he was able to wield this sword with ease, apparently. And it's a very strong sword. I'm sure once Zoro masters it, he will be taking down Kane, of course, plus this Conqueror's Hockey thing that happens in a hot second. But it's very hard to scale where exactly Odin falls on the old tier list, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it could just be that, like, you know, the sword was effectively made for him. Like, they meshed as well as they could. 100% affinity or whatever. But even that, like, I don't know, maybe it really is just a fantastic sword that brought out the best in this guy.
I suppose so. It's not like one of the, like, super D-duper swords that, like, Mihawk has.
It's a really good sword, but...
Yeah. Not one of the top tier ones, I guess. Maybe you can, like... I don't remember if this has been, like, mentioned as true before. But we know that you can, like, forge a sword into a black blade. Which is what Shishui is, and Mihawk's sword are, like, permanently black blades because of all the haki that has been cruising through them over the years. So maybe you can kind of upgrade, like, the level that your sword is at by making it into a black blade. Maybe once Enma becomes one permanently, it'll be bumped up a rank to be on par with Mihawk's.
Okay, so, like, maybe Odin had done that, but now Zoro needs to, like, replace it with his own haki, kind of, to get the same effect. Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying that, like, I don't know what, like, the overall point is there. It's just a small, Zoro has to have a sword. Well, he doesn't have to, but I think Zoro will one day have a sword on par with Mihawk's, and maybe Enma will be the one to get there. Because we already know that it was already stated that Odin never forged it into a black blade permanently.
Right, but are you saying that it's like... I don't know. I guess this doesn't really matter, but is it like a weapon in Soul Eater or whatever, where you have to get, you know, the 99 or the 100 witch souls or whatever, and, like, this was gotten to 50 by Odin, and now Zoro needs to get it the other 50, Or do you think that he needs to, like, flush it out of Odin's hockey, which is why it's kind of misbehaving, right? Like, it's filled up with his hockey and it's expecting more of that, but it's getting Zoro's, and it's like, wait, hold on, that's not my stuff. That's not what I'm accustomed to, you know?
I think it's more the first one. I think just Odin just didn't do enough fights over his years to permanently forge it into one. I don't think what's currently happening with Enma is like a matter of like Odin's haki being stored in there and has to be replaced with Zoro's. I think the sword is just like, hey, my last master was a real badass. I'm gonna keep sucking your haki until you can prove that you can handle me, basically. Like I said before, like it has to prove that it is. Zoro has to prove that he is up to Enma's standards, basically.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that goes. Some mooks show up, just out of the blue, basically, to be shown off that Zoro is putting out Conqueror's haki now. That's fun. As Zoro is doing this, he's trying to figure out to himself how he's going to be constantly pouring the haki that Enma is demanding of him. He's like, hey, if I have to keep pouring out all this haki constantly, I'll like be dead in a few minutes. And all he says here is, no, that's perfect. But what I took away from those 4 words was kind of what was going on with Zoro's mental state with Mr. One back in the day. How he couldn't cut steel, but he knows that in order to be able to beat Mr. One, he has to be able to. Therefore, when he beats Mr. One, he can cut steel and will therefore be stronger. I think it's a similar situation here, where I currently can't do this, but I'm going to do it in order to be able to beat this guy, so I will be that much buffer by the time I've done it.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect read here.
On occasion, I have some wisdom about Zoro, too.
It's allowed. No complaints here.
Quite so. But he is putting out Conqueror's haki in the meantime, knocking out dudes left and right, but not King, of course. King made it into the room, says, you intend to become a king as well? Zoro seems confused about this initially, and then immediately says, yeah, that's right.
Right? Like, I don't quite understand that. I guess he got lost in the conversation.
I suppose so. Then he says, I gotta keep my promise to my captain and my best friend. I don't often, like, poke my head into, like, the comments on each chapter, like, on the Shonen Jump website itself. But just on a whim, I decided to this time. Like, people in there are, like, complaining that Zoro is calling Luffy his best friend here. And even if that were the case, I don't think that's a big deal. Secondly, I don't think that's what's happening here. I read it as, I've got to keep my promise to my captain and also my best friend, which I believe he's referring to Kuina.
It has to be.
Yeah.
It has to be. Like, Luffy might be his, whatever, current best friend, or whatever you want to call it. Because, like, the man's done a lot for him, and vice versa. But no one's ever going to replace Kuina for him. It's just, that's not how it works.
Exactly. He's modeled his entire, like, way of life over a promise he made to her.
Yeah,
so,
nothing will trump that. Sorry.
Indeed. So, to the people in the comments on Shonen Jump who were saying that, shame on you. Reading comprehension is lost upon you.
Yeah, you're friends. Goofy and wrong.
That's right. That's where the chapter ends. I think I covered all of my points as we were going. Anything else you have to say about this one before we move on?
Not really. It was a Zoro chapter that I quite enjoyed, so good job.
Yeah. Still very confused about what's going on with King, but I liked the bits with Zoro here. Get a little bit of his backstory.
Yeah, and I'd rather be confused by King than by Orochi, so, like, that's a win.
Indeed. Any chapter that doesn't have Orochi in it is a win in my book.
10 out of 10.
Until we get to the chapter that he actually dies, and that'll be the one good Orochi chapter. It'll make all the other ones worthwhile.
Yeah.
Maybe.
All of the false deaths are 1 out of 10 for sure.
That's right. But no break next week. The manga will return on December 5th, 1 week from today as of the time of recording. That takes us into the reread segment, this week covering chapters 413 through 421, which covers the Sanji fight, the Zoro fight, and a little bit of the Rob Lucci stuff up until the reveal of Gear 3rd.
That was quite the effective breakdown you laid out there. I mean, we can go through it pretty much with those 3 overarching bullet points. Even though the first main focus is on the Sanji fight, before that we do get a little bit of Kaku and Zoro. And once again, it just does not disappoint. Zoro has been freed, and he's he's been dealing with some, not to put it lightly, but some shit for a while.
Pretty serious handicap for sure.
Yes. But this man hops into the fight immediately going for the neck, the very, very large, very vulnerable neck, in an attempt to finish it in one move and make up for some lost time, but it just does not pan out. Seems like Kaku was expecting this.
Yeah, wouldn't you know it? He saw a potential weakness in his neck and thought that Zoro might try to exploit it. Lo and behold, the man has fought before.
I mean, it makes sense. It's what I would have done. On both accounts, it's what I would have done. But while Zoro's doing that, Jabra, Nami, and Usopp kind of just look on for a bit. And then Jabra does one of his classic moves of pulling a goof. And I'm a little disappointed in Usopp here. I don't know why he would believe this for even a second. He has been chased by this guy for probably at least a half hour or more. And he still just doesn't see through the obvious farce. It's super weird. It gives Sanji a cool entrance, but not sure that makes up for it.
Yeah, in trying to justify it from Usopp's perspective, I think in the back of his mind, he probably didn't fully believe what Jabra was saying, but he didn't know that Sanji was going to show up and help him out. So to him, he was hoping that this was true so that he could get the key and get out of there without, dying and such.
Yeah.
It's really the only way to justify it.
It's not great, but sure. I don't know. It's hard to argue self-preservation when you're still walking into a trap knowingly. I don't know. But regardless, it happens. So.
Yeah. Leads to a real cool Sanji moment. I like this whole interaction between him and Usopp immediately following this.
Oh yeah, that's some classic stuff.
Yep. Takes over Usopp's fight against Jabra, but does so without demeaning Usopp's potential contribution. Sanji is a beefer, he's good at fighting strong opponents like Jabra, but Usopp has other valuable skills that he can use to help Robin too, which is, I'm sure, exactly what Usopp needed to hear, considering that Usopp feeling eclipsed was exactly the crux of his falling out with Luffy not all that long ago. And I would imagine, pretty much guaranteed, that Usopp was feeling even worse about himself in that regard after he was being thrashed by Jabra mere moments ago. And Sanji here also just doesn't outright tell Usopp what he thinks the solution here is. He tells him basically to figure out himself, which leaves the door open for him to consider what his own strengths are and act on them, which I'm sure is a nice little morale boost for the long-nosed lad.
Yeah, I think this is one part of the puzzle that needed to be put together for him to actually get his confidence back that we see later. the other part he gets from Zoro in a bit, but like without this foundation, the other pieces couldn't have fallen into place, and it wouldn't have folded out how it does, you know.
Yep. It's classic Oda. I really like that he like. We all knew, I'm sure, going forward that Sanji was going to get back up and fight somebody, right? But I really like that he like made it a character moment for both Sanji and Usopp, while still giving Sanji like the cool guy fight that I'm sure everybody was screaming for at the time.
Yeah, as soon as you saw the bathtub, you kind of knew that something was going to happen. Jabra makes the most sense, of course, especially at this point when there aren't any others. So like, it did all make sense, but also there was no guarantee. You never know.
Pretty much.
But yeah, during the fight, lots of cool stuff happens. The Wolfman states that he's the only member of CP9 that can use full iron body and like still move around, which is pretty impressive. And like that, I guess it could be read differently, but I took it as meaning that Jabra had sort of a higher mastery of the move, and therefore it was probably stronger than the others. So,
You mean like his defense buff was also higher?
yeah, that's how I took it. So if that is the case, then extra props to Sanji for eventually toppling this dude. Also, I would imagine that Rob Lucci is exempt from what he's talking about.
Yeah, I would also imagine that, just because like a little bit later, we had a little bit of conflict with Frankie and Rob Lucci there, where he lands the Frankie hammer, whatever the move is, and he hits Rob Lucci while he's doing the iron body. Frankie comments there, "Whoa, you didn't budge at all," and this move sent that Fukuro guy flying. To which Rob Lucci responds, "Too bad, son. My power level is 5 times his," which seems to indicate that like the defense buff given by it is determined by your power level.
Or you can just train in the move. I mean, I was going to bring this up later, but like, we know that Rob is a master of all 6 of the powers, right? Because he has the secret 7th one that we see later down the line. And in this chunk, I noticed that Jabra seems to be sort of a master of the Iron Body, whereas Kaku seems kind of the master of the Tempest Kick. And there are 6 members in CP9 other than Rob Lucci, so like, I got to thinking of if each of them is sort of a master of one of them right now. And I didn't really give it any more thought past that. I was going to ask you your opinion on it.
Well, let's see. Fukuro was using a lot of paper art, if I recall correctly, because he had like the specialty slime move, which didn't really seem all that different from the paper art, but I guess he can call it whatever he wants.
I thought he was kind of the air step guy.
Yeah, he could also be.
He did a lot of that in the fight.
That's
and then
true.
Kumadori maybe was the paper art guy, just because, well,
Kumadori also had that like like hair based finger pistol move that he liked to use. Plus like his he had like a stick that he used that
oh
also like
yeah,
functioned in the same way.
yeah.
Um Not really sure what Caulifla's would be. She didn't.
She might have had the paper art. That would make sense
Maybe.
for the way that Oda tends to write women.
That's true. Plus like the wiggly movements of that seems to kind of jive with like soap based abilities.
And she
I
does
guess.
the wiggle finger pistol, so.
That's true. All right, we craft the code.
And then
What is
Bluno would
left?
have.
Not sure. There are 6 of them. There's the finger pistol. Oh, Bluno has, well, the one that's left is Shave. And I would be hard pressed to say that Bluno is faster than Kaku, Jabra, etc.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
But in, like, from a narrative perspective, I could kind of see it. because that was the fight where Luffy like showed off that he can also use that attack, basically.
That's true. That is a good point. And he kind of gets to cheat with the air door anyway, so
Yeah, that's true.
we'll give it to him just to make it work.
I'll give that one 3/4 credit, and we'll round up. There we go. Yeah, that was a good find. I'm not sure if that was intended by Oda, but I think there's pretty much no contradictions there. Well
Yeah,
done.
you can make it work if nothing else. So like,
Yeah,
it's fun for now until someone proves us wrong, I guess.
right.
So back to Sanji's fight. There's one specific part of it, kind of in between chapters, in between 414 and 415, that just like, I don't know, it was a really fun time for me. It's the start of like just some excellent back and forth between these two. It's pretty much an exchange of who has the upper hand for the rest of the battle, right? Like they just keep one-upping each other and pulling off some really impressive moves. But right at the end of 414, Jabra tried to pull off like another lie to Sanji in hopes of getting an easy win, and Sanji sees through it immediately. He gets a hold of Jabra's key and flips the fight completely on its head. Like, it's so good. It's so satisfying to see him do like so much with so little. That's kind of a big thing that I appreciate about Sanji. His fights are clean and well thought out a lot of the time. Sometimes he does just go nuts and beat someone, which like I get that too, you know. But this one really comes off as cool and calculated, and that's really good to see.
Yeah, Sanji was fighting a tricky boy, or Jabra at least was trying to be a tricky boy. So Sanji got a little tricky himself. He got like some feints in, like he pretended like he was going to use his party table kick course, and then like stepped around the guy and kicked him in the back of the knee instead.
Yep. I mean, he like fakes running away in order to get a clean shot on his face. Like it's all
landed a backflip kick right into his big dumb nose.
Oh, so good. Like it's, I don't know. Maybe he saw how Usopp was doing things lately, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll give that a shot. I'll add some of that spice to my fight."
Yeah, may as well. But that's not the only spice he added to this fight.
Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, seeing the Diablo Jamba, so good. Oh, I mean, right before that, it really seems like he's in such a bad spot, too. Like, Jabra pulls off I don't remember what it's called, but like the bouncing Tempest kick, the wolves that come out. It's like 5 of them coming right at him. And then, I mean, even to the moment beforehand when he's got the 10 finger pistols, well, for the second hit with the fiery leg, I guess. I mean, that's the one that is, for me, like the most exciting, where he decides to take half of the attack just to guarantee he has positioning for the finishing shot. That, I don't know why, but that is so good.
Yeah, big risk too, because if like any of those like 5 finger pistols had like hit his heart, for instance, would have been done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No coming back from that one. I don't care how close Chopper is, you're done.
Like each of Jabra's fingers are quite large because of his wolf form, and he's got 5 of them. So
very pointy. Yeah.
Indeed. Stabby man. But yeah, he pulls it off, does a cool one-liner at the end in classic Sanji fashion, and we love him all the more for it.
Yeah, I'm sure we could talk about this a lot longer, but no need to, that's for sure.
Gotta talk about Zoro some more.
Yeah, it's a pretty good fight. It has weird comedy that I'm not used to in Zoro fights. I know that he obviously has had some in the past and continues to get some now. But, like, I don't know, Kaku's just a weird one. Like, you know, Zoro pulls out his bandana, Kaku pulls out his perfect cube mode, and suddenly it's anyone's game.
Indeed. The awesome power of the giraffe, the ability to bend your body into a cube and become invincible.
Yep. He's more square than anyone. And while he's in that form, he uses a move that really confuses me and kind of is what part of what got me thinking about if each one had a master over one of the powers. Because he shoots a bunch of the like laser kicks at the ceiling and they bounce off of it. Which, like, yeah, I guess for all I know, it's an aspect of some advanced form, but like, it sure does feel like they should have just done damage to the ceiling. We've never seen them bounce off of anything before.
Yeah, it's weird. Not clarified in any capacity, but
Nope.
perhaps that is just the power of the giraffe.
Right? Yeah, it did feel like Zach was more accurate than I thought last week when he said Kaku was the prototype for King, because it did seem like Kaku should have just said, "This is what giraffes do."
Yeah. But in this particular instance, Zoro knows what a giraffe is and is generally familiar with what giraffes can and cannot do. Not the case with dinosaurs, so he just kind of has to take their word for it.
Right, yeah.
In the modern era, but I do appreciate Zoro calling out Kaku's giraffe nonsense a couple times throughout this.
It's a good time. Someone has to do it. He's the only one there, so thanks, buddy.
Pretty much.
Right, so like, I guess Kaku is still exploring his devil fruit. I mean, he's had it for, what, a day? Maybe? Not even. No, he's had it for like an hour.
Yeah.
And so he's like still learning about his powers, which is extremely evident from the use and the naming of Pasta Machine mid-battle.
Indeed.
So it does kind of make me wonder if the fight would have gone differently had Kaku had more time to learn about being a giraffe man. Like he certainly was not weak, right? And he came up with these moves in an hour. So I have to imagine, given, I don't know, a day, a week, he could have put up at least more of a fight.
Oh, I have no doubt. Did I think if he had like pull his neck in to extend his limbs, like from the hop, and just took Zoro off guard with that immediately, that might have been just the end of him.
Yeah.
If Zoro didn't react real quickly, would have been bad news.
It definitely would have been. Almost as bad as this move that Zoro uses, which at least was translated, from what I could read, to leopard spinning balls.
Do you have a problem with the leopard spinning balls?
I just didn't get it.
Like, the name is what you're taking issue with?
Yeah. I didn't understand the naming of it. I don't know why. It doesn't matter.
Like, the name of that move in Japanese, and the only reason I know this is because I like using it in the Pirate Warriors games, is Hyokin Dama. So the word ball is directly in there.
Yeah.
I think teen, and I probably am just wrong about this, is like the onomatopoeia for spinning, and I assume that just from process of elimination that Hyo somehow relates to leopards.
But like, what does that have to do? I don't. Whatever. Dragon Twister doesn't mean anything either, I guess. But this one doesn't even sound cool to me.
It's one of his moves that the name should go back to the old workshop phase for sure.
Yeah, please work on it.
Indeed. Maybe he and Law can like team up and like figure out between the two of them better names for this and like the Kroom attack from a few chapters ago.
I'm sure they're not the only ones that we could criticize their naming conventions. So we'll get a whole support group going. But before that, we got to talk about the end of this fight, where things, definitely get a little confusing, and it's not all due to Zoro pulling out the Ashura 9 sword style. I'm fairly certain that Kaku straight up says the only reason he could use his swords effectively was because he was using the Pasta Machine move. Like, without the extended arms and legs, he couldn't use them at their full extent. But for sure in the last pages of 417, he's using the swords and has a long neck at the same time. So either he's like a very quick learner and implementator, or Oda goofed. Or I could have missed something, I guess.
I don't have it in front of me, but I thought that, like, during that clash, Kaku says something about, like, if I can, like, control the length of my limbs and neck, like, in tandem, I'll be invincible, or, you know, something along those lines. So I think he was just, like, swapping back and forth, like, as the situation demanded.
Oh, he was saying the
there.
control over the length, not the length itself. Gotcha.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I'll buy that.
Again, I might have just made that up, but
Sure,
I'm pretty
but
sure that's what he said.
It works for me. Yeah. So if I remember, Zoro does like the tower climb and then the tower climb return, and Kaku does the sky slicer move, and Zoro pulls out the Ashura 9 sword style and kind of just takes him out.
Yeah, he sure does. This move has been used 2 other times since then, and I still don't understand what on earth is happening.
Happens in one of the movies, I know that.
That's true. Counting that, it is 3 additional times. But
Yeah.
Kaku says that he's using, like, sheer will to manifest 2 additional heads and 4 additional arms. So is it, like, an illusion? Is it
Well,
just
if
like
it's just an illusion, then how does that make him any more powerful?
Yeah, right? How very strange. And then he turns his slashing attack into a mist. What does that mean? Exactly.
I don't know. It's very unclear. I really wish there was some clarification here.
I mean, we're never going to get it. I mean, if we haven't gotten it by now, I don't think it's ever going to come. It's just a thing that Zoro can do when the situation demands it, I guess. But definitely one of the stranger attacks in the franchise.
Yeah. It's cool. Like,
Yeah,
no doubt,
no
it
doubt.
is cool. But that's not enough for me. Sorry.
Quite so. Zoro shows up, he turns his slashing attack into a mist, refuses to elaborate, and then he leaves. And that's
He
that is this
wins,
fight.
and then he leaves.
Pretty much.
Ugh. Anyway.
But he does tell Kaku that he's fired, like Paulie asked him to.
Yeah,
Well
that was
done.
pretty cool. I do enjoy that. And then after that, we finally get another patented Sanji slide in chapter 418. I don't exactly remember when the last one was, but I want to say it was like Alabasta or Little Gardens or something like that, where he's just got his legs as bow-legged as they can be, almost looking like a staple, and he slides across. Last time I think he had like his hand on his face like he was thinking.
Yeah, he was like pondering something.
I want to say
And
he
he,
was
like-
figuring out his plan for how to deal with like Mr. 3 or whatever. Like he had just come across the wax house in the forest.
That might have also happened. The one I'm thinking of was indeed in Alabasta, though, where he's like trying to figure out where
Yes,
the cannon is.
that is
And
it
he, like,
exactly.
kicks through a building to make a path for himself.
Yeah, I love that. So good. And it is good to see that I was not crazy then and I'm not crazy now for thinking that this is a thing he just does.
Indeed.
Ugh,
A good
what
boy,
an
that
angular
Sanji.
man.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all on Sanji. So then we get a real kind of brief check-in with Robin and Spandam, which is just really shitty and awful, and I don't like thinking about it.
Yeah.
This man is just the worst to her, and if you've read it before, you already know, and that's enough for me. And then we kind of jump into the Robin Luffy fight for a bit, and we're immediately reminded that if it were almost anyone other than Luffy in this fight, it would already be over. Like, 6 Ways to Sunday, already over. Aside from, like, Logia types, I can't think of anyone that would have survived the Yellow Lotus move that he throws out.
Yeah. The only reason Luffy survives is because he's made of rubber. So if that had landed on an ordinary lad, I mean, maybe Frankie could have survived it with his front being like made of iron, but aside from him,
Maybe. I mean, Frankie was not looking good after a punch from Rob, right? Like,
yeah, that's true.
makes him basically lose his lunch.
All that cola coming
Yeah,
up.
right. And it's that very punch that kind of, well, I mean, literally makes Luffy kick it into the next gear. It is after this that he pulls out gear second, which he's been holding off on because he knows he's got a limit on it. But like, now that he has not necessarily backup reinforcements, that's the right way to put it. Now that he has reinforcements, like, he can kind of take the fight more seriously. And I mean, you gotta love the turn in here, that jet pistol just catching Rob by surprise. So good.
Very satisfying seeing that guy take a hit.
He gets a few good hits off here.
No, he certainly does.
And then, like, during this fight, when, well, it struck me as a little weird how quickly Luffy flips his attitude towards Frankie. Like, when he first bursts in, Luffy straight up calls him a jerk and is like, "Why are you here?" And then after one quick assurance from Frankie, he's willing to go so far as to tell Frankie to look after Robin, which is kind of the core of the whole mission. Like, it's not that Frankie doesn't prove he's willing to fight for the cause and put in the work, but that's just a lot of trust and not a lot of time or words exchanged.
True. It's not as though Luffy had much else choice in the matter, but
Yeah,
the
that is-
heel turn there is a little strange.
That's the conclusion that I got to as well. Like, who else are you going to rely on at this point? But, oh man, if he, like, obviously Luffy's very good at reading people, obviously. But if he would have been wrong, hoo boy.
I mean, could Frankie have really made it that much worse? They were already in, like, the worst case scenario, basically. Is one more bad thing really that much worse?
That's true. Good point. Yeah. Yeah. But, like, this is the guy that beat up
Calculated risk.
Usopp, you know? Like,
True.
I guess he does know that he's done... Well, what does Luffy know? Luffy doesn't know much about the guy, honestly, other than that.
Luffy knows that he was helping out Sanji on the train.
Yep.
Um,
That might be enough.
and he was like around when Fukuro was like explaining the rules of the key game they're playing, basically. But aside from that, all of Luffy's interactions with Frankie have been bad ones.
Yeah. So I don't know. Not really complaining, but it just struck me as a little weird on a second read through. Back to Robin, though, getting real emotional. I mean, she's been reinvigorated and fighting this whole time, going so far as to biting stone to hold up her departure.
She's doing whatever she can to hold up her captors a little bit, and that was one of the more desperate moves, and it hurts my heart.
Yeah, like this dude's dragging her by the hair, but she's got to hold on to any bit of hope that she has. And honestly, her friends have given her quite a bit of hope at this point. Like, she is, it's new for her. So it's probably something she really wants to cling on to and makes it easier to keep fighting, I would hope.
Yeah. She was resigned to death like an hour and a half ago, and Luffy and co, for the first time, made her feel like she actually wanted to live, and sure would suck if they didn't show up now.
Right. Like, these are the first people in 20 years, pretty much, that have cared about her. And, like, Spandam did also just remind her that, like, his dad killed everyone that she knew 20 years ago. It's just like, goddamn, leave her alone. But, she does, like, get another burst of inspiration when Frankie shows up to get immediately blown up. Like, even though it doesn't pay off right then and there, she still knows that people are making progress towards her. Because the last that she heard was just kind of an explosion in the distance, which, she rightfully assumed is people coming to help her, but, like, she couldn't be 100% sure, and this has to be good to know that all of her efforts are, like, actually paying off right now. The struggling. Without it, she very likely would have already been through there, like, almost no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
And that is followed up pretty quickly by Usopp really, really shining here. Like, it basically may as well be observation hockey between this and something that happens a little bit later, where he's the first one to hear the rushing water between him, Zoro, and Sanji. Like, yeah, basically, you've unlocked it, dude. Good job. He snipes the crap out of, I don't know, 20, 30 Marines from a mile away? I don't know.
It's hard to gauge the exact distance, but from the top of a really tall tower, considerable distance away, and like wind and mist and
with a
bad
weapon that
conditions.
he created himself not but, like, what, a week ago?
Yeah.
It's nuts. It's crazy to think about. But as we said earlier, he's kind of been spurred on by his crewmates, it's the medicine he needed.
Exactly so. Good work, Sanji. Good work, Usopp.
Yeah.
Two good boys.
Yeah. Usopp gives Robin the window to, like, actually try to escape, followed by Frankie tanking the rifle shots that are, immediately fired at her. And that's pretty much top tier One Piece energy. Like, this goes along perfectly with what Sanji was saying earlier and what we've said before with the whole, you do you, I'll do me, and that's how the best crew is going to be. And this is it to a T, the whole crew come together, doing what they have to, and they're not even, like, getting out perfectly or unscathed. Everyone's in bad shape, but they are clawing their way out.
Indeed. They do their best work in the most desperate situations, for sure.
Well, and also with these three specifically, like Frankie, Robin, and Usopp, even though it's not official, like, Frankie is the newest of the crew. Usopp, as I'm sure have said no shortage of times, he's been going through a lot, especially with his position in the crew. And Robin, who kind of needs this reinforcement more than anyone. Like, the fact that people are always going to have your back and that you can get your power from other people in times of dire need, It's just good. It's feel good stuff. All of this is very sad, but very rewarding.
Quite so. One Piece at its best.
Also, Usopp should be dead.
100%.
Not only did he take a bunch of damage from some strong dudes, but that fall from the tower, oh my god.
And then he goes, I'm a hero. Somebody should have caught me. Poor guy.
I mean, he's right, but also... maybe you should have jumped when they told you to jump, bud.
Right. Poor guy.
Oh well. We cut back to the Rob fight, and, well, it's not really a fight at this point. It's Rob being a huge meanie by cutting a hole in the wall, which, would normally be a problem for Luffy and him, but it turns out there's, like, a platform above them that they can just kind of get to, and it's fine. But it sends a bunch of water rushing for pretty much everyone else at this point.
Indeed.
And Luffy, I mean, he knows his crew well enough to trust them always, but that prompts Rob to, like, compliment him on his worthiness of being captain, which is as close as Rob gets to respecting someone, it seems. And as weird as it is, that probably feels good to Luffy, because like that was something that he was struggling with fairly recently, and this dude, while not respectable in any way, is very strong. So like to be recognized in that way probably feels good, but also weird. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some mixed feelings about it. Like, he certainly doesn't care about Rob Lucci's opinion
No.
of him, but just the fact that, like you said, his worthiness as a captain was being brought into question not all that long ago. So just that somebody in like a position of some power feels this way, you know.
Someone that very much respects authority. Like,
Right.
yeah. Even though he knows that Spandam's an idiot, he respects the position more than anything. So like it kind of does mean something more coming from Rob, even though you're 100% right. He could not give two shits about his opinion.
Right. I don't think Luffy's going to be calling up Rob Lucci on the Den Den Mushi anytime soon. Like, exchanging recipes and like getting his thoughts on like current events on the crew.
No.
That would be funny, but I don't think that's going to happen.
It'd be very silly. Maybe it'll happen once they eventually clash again in the future. Who knows?
Yeah. They'll exchange phone numbers at that time.
Yeah. Right. So, like I said, they moved to this like upper area so that they can keep their fight going. It's above sea level, so they got nothing to worry about. And I mean, one way or another, eventually Luffy is just pushed as near to his breaking point as he is willing to allow. He's got these flying finger pistols coming at him, Tempest kicks, so many things that like he's been trying to beat him in this fight of speed and number of hits and kind of trying to break the iron body. And then it's not working, and he says, you know what? Fine. A lot of small hits don't work. Let's try one big one.
And then he does the biggest hit ever.
Yeah. I had forgotten that part of the explanation for the power of Gear Third is like the air is moving through his bones, and that makes it more powerful. I guess it's kind of compressing it. It doesn't quite make sense to me.
Yeah, they're trying to like explain what is effectively cartoon logic.
Oh yeah.
You know. Fair enough, Oda, but you don't have to do that. It's
right,
a big
like
hand.
how the air is even getting in his bones in the first place is a mystery. Like, could have just left it as blowing up his hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's very effective. It's really cool. I mean, it's a great end of a chapter. I'm sure it sent people going crazy when it came out.
Me included. I mean, I wasn't reading weekly at this time, but I remember fondly reading this in my business organization class back in the day and giving out a little cheer in my seat when Luffy sent that guy crashing through the wall.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like he's headed straight for the water, which is no good. I mean, it also doesn't end up paying off, but like, he had the right idea.
Yeah. Had Luffy like punched downward a little bit and just pushed him directly into the water, that would have been game over.
Yep, no problems.
Too bad he's a dummy.
Grow that brain just a little bit, Luffy.
Yeah.
But I think all of my like final things that I was going to jump back to, I ended up hitting as we went through.
Isn't that just always the way?
Not always. This time, like, I don't know. I didn't have any notes on SBSs or anything. Like, I was going to talk about the Six Powers thing here at the end, but nope.
Already came up naturally.
Yeah.
Good work, us.
Champions.
So if that's the case, guess we'll discuss our funny business in brief and then get the heck out of here. For some of mine, we covered them as we went, as we always do, but I did have a few more here. Nami keeps trying. I mean, I say keeps trying, but says some combination of Soji King and Usopp and just gets further and further away from the Soji King version, which each attempt sending Usopp into a a spiral of rage and sadness.
The last one where it's just no sop, where he's just upset that none of Sniper King is in there.
Yeah.
It's very good. It's just
Didn't
like,
even have to put the nose bit in there. Just did it to be mean.
yup.
Like, oh,
She's
classic
been
moment.
real snarky lately. I'm into it.
At some point, I forget at what point, if it was like the little bit of Luffy when Frankie was there, the later bits, but Rob Lucci is like, don't you remember when I thrashed you real hardcore in the mansion? To which Luffy responds, I ate some meat and got over it.
Yeah, no big deal. Whatever.
Yeah. Easy peasy. Not a problem at all.
This isn't really like chronological in any way, but one of my funny bits is literally just Jabra's feet.
His feet.
They're so, at least in like his I guess it's his hybrid form. I don't know. They're so long, my guy.
But he's still wearing his shoes.
Yeah, dude's wearing like size 32 shoes. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I know one of the SBSs talks about like CP9's clothing stretching, but goodness.
50 Domu Domus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to get technical here.
Plenty of stretch. Let's see. And the last one I had is Usopp's increasing number of ribs. The longer
it's so
Zoro
good.
and Sanji carry him.
I've broken all of my ribs. All 6 of them. No, you have more ribs than that.
All 10.
No, more. Completely unnecessary, but it's the inter-crew dynamic that I always crave personally.
Indeed. Things are bad in Annie's lobby, but Oda's trying to keep it light, and I appreciate that.
Yep. And that actually, those were mine as well.
That pretty much wraps it up for us for this week. Like I said before, there is no break next week. The next chapter drops on December 5th. Feel free to send in your thoughts on this chapter via email to inheritedwillpodcasts@gmail.com, on Twitter to @inherited_will, or simply in a comment on the platform of your choosing.
And as a quick note, Thomas and I do read and then record these on Sundays. So if you felt so inclined and were quick enough, you could get queries in for the current chapter before our recording. So for any dedicated listeners that really have something that they want to maybe be addressed immediately, there is an option.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.